I'd like you to imagine the moment when you are just about to go grocery shopping. It's the end of the week, your fridge is empty, so you need to buy a lot of stuff, so probably driving to the store is a good idea. It takes you about 10 minutes to get there, a few minutes to park, and then you see all the other people, or the hundreds of other people who had exactly the same idea at the same time. You enter the store, you start picking your groceries, you get your bananas, you get your apples, and by the time you have about 50 items in your basket, you get to the checkout. And then, when it's your turn, you carefully take every single item you just added to the basket, you remove it for someone else to touch it for you, you move it back to your basket, and few minutes later, you are free to leave the store. You move the groceries again from your basket to your car. You drive home thinking of the cold beer that is in your car. You get home and again you remove your groceries. Again, you move it, you distribute it in your kitchen. At this point, you probably wasted 1 hour of your life that you will never get back. But that's okay, because the next week you are going to do exactly the same. And the week after, and a week after that. Now, imagine someone else did that for you. You just think what you want, and someone else goes through all this hassle for you. That would be cool. Now, imagine it's not even a human being who would do that. Imagine it's a robot. This is how we do it at Ocado. We change how people shop, how the world shops. This is a simulation of our newest warehouse. This grid is bigger than this room, just filled with all the groceries, all the food you would like, all the beer. And on top of this grid, we have the army of robots that all day long, they just pick the groceries for you, so you don't have to go to the store. It's really cool, and actually I find this video fascinating. I can just stare at this all the time. What's really cool about this, we have hundreds and hundreds of these bots on top of this grid, and they don't even know about each other, yet they never bump into each other either. It's really, really cool. Okay, enough showing off. Why am I telling you this? It took us about 15 years to get to this stage, to have this excellent idea. We started as a relatively small startup in the UK, and in time, when we discovered this is a good idea, customers are really interested in online shopping, online grocery shopping, we started hiring more and more people, we started creating new departments, we started scaling really rapidly. We even created our own technology unit that today is across Europe, across 6 different development centers. Funny enough, one is just 30 minutes walk from here, so if you're interested, come and stop by. And it's great to be in this position. You know you are successful, you hired thousands of people. But there is a price to pay for this. Every new department, every new agile team you add to the mix also adds new communication lines, new barriers. People are now living in different countries, they speak different languages. There is a cultural barrier as well. There are so many new factors. This picture is getting really, really much more complicated than it was before. So how do you stay on top of this? How do you make sure that all the people within the organization, and I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of employees, how do you make sure they go the same direction? That was my job to figure this out a few years ago. And I was thinking, with this many people in the mix, it probably has to be something really simple. I didn't want to add any more complexity to that. I was looking at our roadmap, thinking, how can we better understand what's truly important? How can we align runs the top priorities of the company, what the top priorities actually are after 15 years of being in the business. As I said, I wanted to keep it super simple. So I thought, how about starting from a simple Moscow? And I know you know what it is, but I'm going to say it anyway. Moscow stands for must, should, could, or want. I wanted to analyze all the business initiatives and see what's truly a must for us. You're probably guessing that majority of the business initiatives ended in the must bucket. Some technical upgrades were should or could. Nothing really ended up in want. So we ended up with still hundreds of initiatives and no steer clear what's most important. So then I thought maybe it is a time to have something more advanced. I was looking at all the frameworks out there, and RISE seems to be very popular. Out of interest, how many of you use RISE? Oh. Well, it was more popular when I looked at that. To everyone else, RISE stands for Reach, Impact, Confidence, and Effort. So you take these factors into consideration to prioritize your work. The thing is that in our context, it wasn't really helpful, because reach and impact, we had a lot of customers. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of people always impacted by this work. So it's a big number to start from. Then the confidence. At the point when we learned about these business initiatives, there were already a lot of business analysts or other people analyzing, testing, doing some MVPs to understand, is this the right thing to do? So the confidence factor, always 100% or more, depends on who you speak to. And then effort. Again, at this point, it was always a lot of work. So RISE was just multiplying big numbers, dividing by big numbers, wasn't really that clear. I felt there was something missing there and something not really right for us. We ended up asking our HIPPO. HIPPO stands for highest paid person's opinion, and it was really helpful. I don't really know why they get such a bad reputation, these people. They are there for a reason. It was really helpful. Our CEO told us about top priorities. He said these 5 initiatives, this is something that we should really focus on. Everything else comes second. And it was really helpful. We even reorganized ourselves to make these initiatives happen. But it's not really scalable. Like, we can't come to our CEO every time and ask about prioritizing hundreds of these initiatives. And the inspiration came to me completely outside the office environment. I was going on holiday, and my train got delayed. I missed the flight. I had to pay extra to get to my holiday destination, and yet I never got the same benefit. It wasn't 2 weeks anymore, it was less. So even the return on investment changed. I had to pay more and benefit less. And that made me think, it might be the same for our business initiatives, our projects. If we work on something right now, that means we are delaying something else. What does it actually mean going late to the market for this particular initiative? Luckily enough, there's a framework that helps with that. The missing ingredient is time and understanding what happens in time. I'm going to very briefly talk about cost of delay. How many of you are familiar with this framework? Oh, more than right, excellent. This talk is not exactly about cost of delay, so I'm going to keep it really short. There's much more to that. Let's say this is your homework. Cost of delay makes you think about what are we missing. So imagine that project you are working on at the moment. Imagine that magically you could go live right now with this work. What would change? What would be the monetary benefit you would have if you were live with this today? And that's the dashed line on this chart. Now, because you are not having this yet, you are still working, you will go to the market a bit later. So technically, you are already losing some money. And understanding how much you are losing, what's the speed of losing this, that's the delay cost, or cost of delay. So for example, you think, if I don't automate this particular process, I have 10 people doing something manually for a few hours. What's the cost of these few hours? What's the cost over every single week? We pay extra. We wouldn't have to pay that if we had this live. That's the cost of delay. I hope you are still with me. Now, that's a big change, and not everyone knows what cost of delay is, and why should we use that. So how do you introduce this to the whole company and make all the business stakeholders, the senior people, to think differently right now? I took the approach of eating an elephant, so piece by piece, conversation by conversation. Round one was about looking at our roadmap differently. So instead of asking the question, what's the cost of developing this project, we reverted the question to, what's the cost of not having this? We asked people to quantify their decision, quantify the value they think the project will provide. Sounds easy, yet the first pushback was, it's impossible to quantify that. What's the value of improving customer experience? How do you put a number there? Multiple conversations later, we formulated an answer. If you can observe a difference, you can quantify it. There's even an argument that you can measure anything. There is a good book, which I show at the end of this presentation. Quantifying is not about being precise. It's all about reducing uncertainty. So if you are not sure about this number, it's OK if you end up with range of numbers. Range of numbers is still better than no number at all. If you are not sure if your conversion is going to be increased, or what exactly your project is going to, how exactly it's going to help the conversion, it's still better to understand that it's something between 0 and 5% rather than 50%. You understand at this point. You are not sure, but you understand it's not going to be a game changer. It's just going to be a small improvement. So range of numbers still better than no numbers. Once we passed through this, there was another pushback. Surely you can't prioritize by value on its own. Surely it matters if it's how many people are working on this, what you are paying to get for this project, to get this. I kind of would like to argue with this, because if you know that there is a lot of value in this thing and much less value in this, why would you not working on something that is the most valuable thing for the company? But this scheduling framework, cost of delay, actually tells me I'm wrong, because the most efficient way is to use this information as well. However, what's worth noting here, we are not talking about the effort, the person effort. We almost don't care if it's the whole team working on something or one person. But we care a lot about time. So we only want to know what's the duration we can deliver this project. So is it a week or a month? Doesn't matter how many people work on this. I know what you're thinking. The cost does matter, right? Because that's why we do return on investment calculations. And that was the next question I heard. What's actually wrong with ROI? Why would we do something else while ROI already looks at the value, already looks at the effort, and you can perfectly prioritize things just using this? The thing is that return on investment answers a different question. It is about, is it worth doing, as opposed to what the scheduling framework does or answers, what to do first. They are completely two different things, and you can't get away without doing the ROI. This is always the first step. Whatever framework, scheduling framework, or whatever framework you want to put on top of this, you still need to do this calculation. Then the magic happened. I got the roadmap full of numbers. Every business initiative had a price tag attached to it, and this was the best day of my life. This is what I thought initially. But then when I looked closer at the numbers, they didn't look quite right. So I knew something about these business initiatives, and I had these two examples when I knew that this one was worth much more than the other one, yet the numbers were telling me something else. I'm happy to be wrong, but I was really sure I wasn't at this point. And all this precision, like we know exactly that the cost of delay is £1,001, didn't seem quite right. And then actually leads to our lesson learned, lesson number 1. Only when we scheduled quite a few meetings to align, to dig deeper how we ended up with the total numbers, only then we discovered where the problem was. It turns out that people were taking the same assumptions to the final calculation, yet they were putting different values on top of this. So for example, we had 2 initiatives, both increasing number of orders, yet what's the value of one order? Is this something that customer pays? But every order increased the cost of delivery as well, or is it the profit we should take into consideration? The latter is the right answer, but it doesn't matter. The problem here was that people were using the same assumptions with different numbers. There was really, really big problems. And actually, a nice side effect of these alignment meetings was that people from different departments had to talk to each other. It was really good. Lesson number 2, it's not really about precision. I see when people try using numbers, they want to have these perfect mathematical equations, but that's not the point. At the end, what we are trying to achieve is to decide what to do first. Do I do this first or this first? It really doesn't matter. The precision here doesn't matter, and it's really a guess. You don't know the future. You don't know exactly how much money this project will bring, and it's even getting worse, because if you show really precise numbers, you give the false impression of confidence. It's still a guess, but you seem very confident in that. So that's a really wrong message to send. So keep it really, really vague, but roughly okay. Lesson 3, probably the most important one. The value is really in the conversation. It's not about the numbers. It's about people talking to each other, showing their thinking, uncovering the assumptions. So many conversations we had to have with multiple people in the room and then individually again to educate everyone. Why do we want this framework? What do we want to achieve? Why this particular way of doing things? And then getting to this habit of quantify everything, or at least trying. Really, people like to stop and say, oh, it's possible to quantify. But get yourself to this habit of thinking, it's possible, let's just try. It won't be perfect, but try. It triggers a lot of more conversations, a lot of questions, a lot of digging in, looking at the assumptions. That's really, really good habit to develop. And at the end of the day, the decision is still yours. Frameworks are there to help us, to guide us, but they don't do the thinking for us. It's still our job to decide what to do in what order. We are in charge, we are responsible, we are accountable. So feel free to break the rules, even if the framework tells you do this. You are still free to change this decision. That's okay. The decision is still yours. That's it from us. This is the book I was talking about. I hope you find it inspirational and you do some homework. It's a really good framework, cost of delay. Thank you.